Hello everybody, yeah, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on the Bay of Corsairs map playing as the Greenskins against the forces of the Lizardmen. And this is a match that in my opinion has kind of gone downhill for the poor Greenskins. Before you could definitely kind of rely on Black Orcs and to an extent big guns to kind of carry the day here for you, but now with Croak, Black Orcs are a huge risk, and my opponent here, Brennis, did actually bring Croak, so that's a huge thing you got to watch out for. And so this build, I was kind of trying to think of what wouldn't be vulnerable to Croak, and at the same time could sort of dispatch whatever monsters my opponent decided to bring, deal with their infantry, all that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we did here. For my lord, I'm running with the Goblin Great Shaman. There isn't much to be said for him. He's cheap. He lets me go wide. He gives me Caster plus Lord L in one. In this case, we did bring Gorkle Fix It in case my opponent wasn't super mobility oriented, so we could slow him down. We got Itchy Nuisance to debuff enemy melee attack and weapon strength. Vindictive Glare, of course, as well as having been nerfed pretty significantly, it's still a significant threat to lightly armored targets. And then Sneaky Stabbing, which should, of course, help my troops in certain cases. And we do have Sneaky Stealing, so we'll be able to nerf enemy recharge rate, evasion, Wah, and Arcane Conduit. So a decent selection of spells there. Main thing, of course, is that we're cheap and cheerful. Now, our front line, also very cheap and cheerful. Front line, 2 Orc Boys, the AP Loonies on one end, the Warlords Boys on the other, 2 Goblins to round things out. Basically, just give me the width I need to deny getting enveloped. In this case, it's definitely going to be necessary because my opponent brought multiple Skink cohorts. And behind that, we do have a single unit of Black Orcs. I figured, you know what, an anchor unit will be useful just in case maybe these guys can pull something out. But obviously, with Croak's deliverance of Eatsa, these guys are an incredibly risky unit because they can get nuked so easily. Besides that, we do have Nasty Skulkers to defend our artillery pieces and our backline. This is really where the killing power comes. We've got 2 Doomdiver Catapults. These guys, of course, got AP in the last batch. So now each of them does 170 AP damage. This is huge because these guys are accurate. You can actually use them as a sort of sniper rifle. And while their DPS isn't necessarily the highest, the fact that they're going to be doing it consistently, and hopefully if I can zone my opponent out, doing it fairly, basically for most of the game, should be very, very helpful. Now besides that, we do have 2 spiders, the Ragnarok Queen as well as a normal Ragnarok Spider. Now the normal Ragnarok definitely a bit squishy, only has 30 melee defense, which is unfortunate. But the Ragnarok Queen is much tankier. She does have spiderlings, and I figured between these two we should be able to stop any big dinos from trying to sneak in. As for Brandis' build over here, he does have the aura stacking Doom Blob. So for his lord, he's running 10-1. He's mounted on a Engine of the Gods Stegodon. For his spells, he's only got the transformation of Kadon. Obviously, with Croak, you don't want to bring too many spells since you're going to be focusing on Croak spells most of the time. He's got Stand Your Ground, Arcane Conduit, the Death Laser, the Burning Alignment. He also does have, of course, Frenzy, because he gets, despite being on a Stegodon, his Frenzy does carry over. He's got the Arcane Configuration, giving him more Winds of Magic on top of the Raider Arcane Conduit that Lord Croak has. And finally, he does actually have an AoE ward save. So this guy's generating an area of effect ward save here with one of his abilities. Not even sure if it's... Oh, there we go. Portent of Warding. So he's got an extra 5% resistance on top of the 15 or 18% physical resist he's going to be getting from the Star Chamber Guardians here. So just insane stacks there. Similar case for Croak. Against missiles, Croak is basically going to be invincible. He's got over 60% missile resistance. For Croak, obviously all his spells... the Supreme Shield of the Old Ones, and he does have Golden Death Mask. Not much to be said there. Croak's just there to be a nuisance and debuff everything and last forever and nuke my troops and make me feel sad. Frontline, Temple Guard, these guys will chew through Black Orcs in a 1v1, in fact. And with all this support, there's basically no way they can lose. And Star Chamber Guardians, of course, providing that Guardian aura. And besides that, simply a bunch of Skink cohorts on the flanks. 2 Chameleon Skinks to zone things away in the front. And then finally, Skink Chief up in the sky looking to harass my lord. And shortly we are going to be disabusing him of that notion with a Vindictive Glare. So you can see this guy trying to get a little too close for comfort. Already my Doomdiver Catapults are focusing on 10-1, doing a little bit of damage. They knocked out a few Temple Guard, but more importantly, we are going to be working on 10-1 and trying to nuke him down. So you can see here the Skink Chief takes a hit and immediately is forced to flee. If we watch here, we can see just how accurate the Doomdivers are. So some of them are missing, obviously, not perfect, but about 2 out of 3 there actually hit 10-1. So definitely a nice performance for the Doomdiver Catapults. They are working things down. They're also hurting the Star Chamber Guardians, who are, of course, protecting him. So that's a decent sort of performance. Now, we are actually going to pull back because I just didn't want to engage just yet. I wanted to try to get some more value out of my Doomdivers. You can see that constant pressure is going to be applied to 10-1. And of course, the closer my opponent gets, the more accurate the Doomdivers are going to get. And you can see this guy, well, he's taking damage. It's about 100 per hit. obviously with all those stacked resistances. It is worth noting that the SARS, or the Stegodon, also gets 15% missile resist, so he's got like 40% resistance to missiles on top of his armor and all that. But we are working down. You can see the Skin Chief there, forced to rout by second Vindictive Glare. We pop Wah, and we're diving in. And Goblins under Wah, obviously one of the most cost-effective units in the game. They're able to just melt these skin cohorts, which is very, very useful. Unfortunately, though, Burning Alignment going down, this front line of Orc Boys completely fell apart. I keep the Black Orcs out for just a second. You can see Itchy Nuisance going down to try to hold this together. We actually dive through with the Ragnaroks, looking to get on 10-1. And we do force him out, which is nice, because now 10-1 is no longer in that Guardian Shell, and he's going to be taking more damage from those Doom Divers. So even though it's not ideal, we're not able to get in on him with the Ragnaroks, which kind of sucks, we were able to pressure him, and we were able to force him out of his defensive shell, which is going to make him much more vulnerable. He does manage to waddle back in there, I think, eventually. He's still not in there, actually, but he's getting pounded in the meantime. And you can see Burning Alignment going down. The Black Orcs here trying their best, but they're getting melted. They're surrounded by Temple Guard. They're taking a pounding from Croak. They've got Supreme Shield of the Old Ones is on. Burning Alignment goes down, just roasts this poor unit. And in the meantime, over here in the backline, things are looking disastrous too, because my opponent did summon a Feral Manticore, which is now pursuing the poor Goblin Great Shaman off the field and forcing me to kind of run for dear life there. In the meantime, though, the Doom Divers are just whittling down 10-1. Obviously, now he's back in his protective bubble, so he's taking less damage, but still, we're getting some value. The Annoying Skin Chief is back, so we're going to hit him with another Vindictive Glare, kind of forcing him off once again. Cold-Blooded does keep him in the fray, but we are managing to sort of whittle him down. Unfortunately, the Manticore has an absolute hard-on for my poor Goblin Great Shaman, who's running for dear life, gets terror-routed. And right now, if he routes off the field, things are going to be basically endgame for me. That said, the continuous pressure. Now, one of the things that happened here is that all these Temple Guard blobbed up to clean up the AP Loonies, to clean up the Skulkers, to clean up the Black Orcs, who've completely shattered off the field, in fact. That's something you almost never see, but despite having 18 models, Black Orcs shattered immediately. And despite that, though, we were able to... we were able to, so if we lose him right now, we would be dead. But fortunately, my opponent here forced to pull his Manticore away, and our boy over here does rally last second. The Skin Chief is trying to get in, but the Goblin Great Shaman is recharging his energy, and he actually Vindictive Glares him at point-blank range. So that is going to be it for this poor Skin Chief. Definitely a nice little win. Suddenly, Balance of Power swings slightly in my favor. I think it's still a bit fake news. Much of it is just because 10-1 is so badly beaten up. From that constant pounding he's been taking, you can see over here the nasty Skulkers committing to the fray, trying to just tie these guys down as best they can. But of course, unfortunately, Croak's spells are just devastating. Now sure, these are the low-tier versions of Croak's spells. So these are the crummy versions of Deliverance, but there's nothing I can do to avoid it. It's taking a huge toll, doing huge amounts of damage, and really making my life miserable. Fortunately, though, the Temple Guard are starting to feel the heat from all that firepower coming in from the Doom Diver catapults. And of course, 10-1 is losing HP. He's resistant. He's got very high resistances, but now he's taking half the ammo off these Doom Divers, and he's starting to feel the pressure. And at this point, he's almost a goner. You can see down to 1400 HP. The Ragnarok Spider diving in there, trying to get in on him. He's got Stand Your Ground going, but it's not going to be enough. Definitely a desperate situation at this point. You can see Spider Hatchlings coming in to protect the Doom Diver, just trying to keep it online. Second Manticore coming in to destroy my Goblin Great Shaman. You can see the Spiderlings there destroying the Skin Cohort alongside this Queen, trying to just break them off, force them to flee. Unfortunately, the Ragnarok Spider, one of the big problems with, of course, that low melee defense, even compared to other large units like, say, Carnosaurs or Shaggoths, especially, actually, or Necrosphinxes. These guys are just so vulnerable to taking damage when they're stuck in melee. And, of course, their low speed makes them a little tough for them to sneak out. And you can see here, I have been poisoned, I do believe, by the missile throwers on 10-1's back. But fortunately, 10-1 here is almost a goner. He's tied down trying to deal with these AP loonies. And in the process there, he's left his protective bubble. So the Star Chamber Guardians are over here. Croak's over here as well. And now this guy is going to go down. You can see 10-1 finally does take a few more hits. He's getting torn apart. These Temple Guard taking hits in the process as well, which is really nice for me. Burning Alignment completely whiffs there. Doesn't hit the Orc Boys. Not that it means very much because the Orc Boys are so badly beaten up. And at this point, even though my opponent is trying to pull back and sort of shut down these Doom Divers, it's too little too late. Another Doom Diver is going to go off shortly, and it's going to put 10-1 into the gutter. You can see 67 HP left. Last few shots coming in before we swap targets. Over here, unfortunately, the Manticore did not manage to shut down the Shaman, and you can see over here the Ragnarok is going to tie it down as 10-1 falls. his Tegadon just collapsing to the dirt as these goblins just flee past him. But that is a huge win, because suddenly my opponent's the balance of power is going to swing more in my favor, stabilize a little bit, and all these infantry units are now going to be suffering a leadership penalty. And Temple Guard are about as close to unbreakable as infantry really gets, but still, we are going to be able to whittle them down a bit. You can see the Doom Divers there doing some damage, a few of them miss. Over here, I could have tried to flee with the crew. The problem is that skinks are faster. They'd be able to run me down, so at this point I just kind of figured, you know what, just time down, buy me time. That said, now that these guys are kind of bogged down here, we're going to be able to start working them over. You can see the Doom Divers going to be firing point blank into this pocket, hopefully doing quite a bit of work. On the peripheries, the Goblins doing a great job zoning out the Chameleon Skinks. These Chameleon Skinks basically out of ammo. That's the nice thing about Goblins. They've got a good amount of HP, 6,000, and they have Silver Shields, so they've been able to zone out these Chameleon Skinks this whole game. This unit over here is actually basically done, and it's all basically thanks to these Goblins. Now over here, we are going to these guys are getting debuffed by something. I do believe it was a smoke bomb from the Skulkers at some point. Perhaps I'm wrong. I'm not entirely sure. It looked like there was a debuff that had gone down. But the Arachnox are able to get in there. They are doing some munching on these Temple Guard. Obviously, they won't be stuck in there for too long. We're going to pull away as Croak does sort of slap the back of my Arachnox there. We're just going to kind of run away. We actually do manage to escape with this crew, which is really nice. The second crew obviously not able to escape, but that's simply because they're too slow to escape the skin cohorts. Unfortunately, here the Arachnox is going to rout. You can see it's poisoned by something. I'm not entirely sure what is poisoning him right now. If it's friendly fire from the other Arachnox spider, perhaps? I'm not entirely sure, because there's nothing that causes poison in my opponent's army otherwise. But that said, at this stage of the game, it's definitely important to sort of do cleanup. So you can see over here, I did take my Shaman out to the flank to force off some skinks. There have been a skink unit over there. Over on the periphery, we are trying to force off these Chameleon Skinks. We've wasted all their ammo, so now they're basically useless or valueless as far as the balance of power goes. Keep in mind, balance of power is based on having 2.6 times your opponent's army in value. I do cast a Vindictive Glare on Croak. Now, Croak is resistant. He does have 25% missile magic resist, and I do believe his missile resist actually counts into that, so that was probably a bad choice by me. But I was just desperate trying to get Croak off the field because of his leadership aura. In the meantime, we are going to cast some Spider Hatchlings. You're looking to bog down some of these troops. We're able to pick off the Skin Cohorts on the flank and just trying to prevent my opponent from rallying his troops. At this point, Brennus gets all of his guys in one pocket. It's likely I won't be able to break through, and that would be just game over. So now the Arachnox is kind of lining up for a charge. You can see here we are positioning ourselves, looking to get a full surround. Fortunately, the Spider Hatchling just buying us some time here to set up. Star Chamber Guardians and Temple Guard all very tired. Basically, everybody at this point is very tired. Croak, of course, is going to be casting a spell here to wipe out these Spider Hatchlings. Perhaps should have been saved, I think, for a later cast against the Goblins, who are, of course, a real unit. But it does delete those Spider Hatchlings in a spectacular explosion of light, and they just collapse. But the Arachnox are diving in. They are focused on Lord Croak. Itchy Nuisance does go down. This is going to counteract the Temple Guard's bonus for Schlarge and their ability to do that much damage to the spiders. And we are going to work on Croak. Now, Croak obviously has huge amounts of HP. He's an incredibly tanky Lord. If we look here at what his exact HP is, it's 5,400, so he's incredibly tanky. You can see another Deliverance of Itza going down. Star Chamber Guardians actually terror out, which is a huge win. Able to force them away a little bit, or at least zone them out for a tiny bit of time. But unfortunately, it's just not enough. We're not able to dispatch the Croakstra here. He's able to stick in there. Star Chamber Guardians do stick around. They actually rally before routing anywhere, I think. And so, although obviously things are not going ideally on all fronts, there is still a very big pocket of Temple Guard here. There's still this very healthy unit of Temple Guard as well. And of course, because Croak does no friendly fire, all these spells, even if my opponent does manage to delete all of my units, he's basically got no risk. Even if all my units are out of this area of effect. Sure, it's not going to do much to the Ragnarok Queen, but it does mean I have to be very careful. And you can see Croak now down to 2,000 HP, so we have done a good number on him. Over here, the Spider catches these Chameleon Skinks out. It's going to be able to tear them apart pretty effectively in close quarters. But unfortunately, my Doom Diver crew, which I actually pulled into the fray there, is going to be forced to flee. The Ragnarok Queen, they're trying to save them by attacking the Skin Cohort. And we are going to summon some Spiderlings here just to buy us some time, to stall my opponent. They immediately start to waver because they are stuck in a bad situation. But hey, at least we'll get some value here. Tying these guys down. My opponent immediately casting the Deliverance, but we are going to get in there, start slowing these Temple Guard down to break them apart. And this is definitely a nice pick, because these Temple Guards were trying to keep it up with my army. We were able to sort of fully route them, and this is important. Getting full routes. Tear routes are nice, but against slower infantry units, they often rally before they get too far, especially if there's stuff in their way. So these Temple Guards are actually going to route. In the meantime, over here, these Skin Cohorts are being intercepted by our Goblin Great Shaman. You can see he's diving in there. And over here, now it is basically just down to the Temple Guard and the Star Chamber Guardians, who are coming in against the Spiders. Obviously going to be performing very well against the Ragnarok Spiders. But with Ichi Nuisance going down, obviously these guys are not the most tanky. At this point, Winds of Magic was very low for myself, so definitely a bit of a disadvantage. The Ragnarok can take an absolute pounding. Obviously, Croak's not really a threat, but all these Temple Guard are doing huge amounts of work. We were able to remove these skinks from the field, which leaves the Doom Divers pretty untouched. Potentially, if I can remount a gun, either there or these guys over here, I could sort of finish this game off just by having 11 rounds. I still have 11 rounds of ammo, which would be enough to kill off the Star Chamber Guardians and the Temple Guard. Over here, the Chameleon Skinks are running away, but now with no blow darts to slow the Ragnarok Queen, they're not really able to slow her. Unfortunately, a bit of a misplay here. I actually clicked on the Ragnarok and accidentally clicked on Croak, or right-clicked on Croak. I thought I told him to stop that, but he does go in. And you can actually watch here just how fast his HP is going to drop against the Temple Guard. And then we turn away to flee, and his HP plummets. The Ragnarok down to less than 700 HP, full flight here. Completely destroyed. And things are looking a bit grim, despite the fact that bounce power is very much in my favor. Right now, if my opponent's army stands and fights, these Temple Guard could hold out with Croak in there. So, definitely a bit of a risk. You can see here, I was trying to get my Doom Diver crew back on the catapults. So, definitely playing it patient, despite the fact that bounce power says it's very much in my favor. Using my Goblin Great Shaman to run these Temple Guard off the field or slaughter them. It's going to be a bit of Benny Hill or a bit of sort of build-up action here. The crew obviously trying to get in, not quite able to cut it. The Chameleon Skinks do rally out in the distance, but we are going to launch a final sort of devastating charge here. The Ragnarok Spider diving in, the Ragnarok Queen summoning her Spider Hatchlings, who are alongside the catapults, probably the MVPs. This game just able to stall out my opponent, and they are going to disrupt the Temple Guard, force a terror out, and Croak is going to go down there for Pyrrhic victory in favor of the Greenskins. Now, a very brutal sort of back and forth game, and definitely came right down to the wire, I think. Croak, obviously an absolute beast, and he forces you to play this matchup, and I think Croak is going to get nerfed in most likely in the next patch, but until then, he really forces you to play an alternate play style in this match as Greenskins. If I had gone with a horde of Black Orcs in this game, which is one of the things I like to do, it's one of the things I used to kind of rely on in this matchup, Croak would basically delete them in 1 or 2 casts of Deliverance of Itza. He could just get 2 big casts, and it would be over. The entire game is done at that point. Now, Greens can missile play. Their missile infantry is not bad, but with all that ward save stacking, with the missile resistances, and the fact that potentially someone like 10-1 can just jump into your backline and disrupt everything, even with nasty skulkers and whatnot there, I think it's a big risk. And I don't think that you can do like Arachnox plus Black Orcs, because the thing is, those Black Orcs are still going to get nuked. And then you're left with the fact that your Arachnox Spiders are alone. They're going to get isolated. Keep in mind, Temple Guard outfight Black Orcs 1-to-1 to begin with. It's not even... Temple Guards are actually... Temple Guards are a really strong unit. They literally outfight Black Orcs 1v1, except obviously Crimson Killers. And so if I'm going against my opponent's build, if he's got his monsters, he's got stacked on top Temple Guard, and then he's got Croak, he's going to nuke my Black Orcs, they're going to be gone, and then my monsters can't stay in there and fight, because the Temple Guard tears him a new one. You saw how badly my Ragnarok Spider got torn apart in one of those last engagements, losing like 500 HP in probably 10 seconds, because he just couldn't deflect those Temple Guard attacks. So I think the Doom Divers here, absolute MVPs. You can see 1 gain to Chevron, 1 gain 2 Chevrons. And the thing is, they probably pay for themselves. If they kill 10-1 alone, that's paying for themselves. And on top of that, all that damage they do to the Temple Guard, basically all these kills, all these 70 or so kills, were on Temple Guard and Star Chamber Guardians. So they're easily paying for themselves in this situation. I think they're a very valuable unit, as long as you can protect them. Obviously, you want some Skulkers, you want some Arachnarch Queens, that sort of thing, to zone out your opponent's flankers. I do think in this game, if Brennan had been a little more, had gone a little wider with his skink cohorts, he might have actually been able to surround me, perhaps knock out my army, or knock out my artillery a little sooner, because I might not have been able to shut him down. But the Doom Divers come in clutch there. The Goblin Great Shaman also, Vindictive Glare, still a strong choice, able to get rid of that Skink Chief over time, definitely was nifty. And yeah, besides that, there's not much to say for this build. This build isn't going to perform super well. Most of these kill counts are inflated by fighting Skinks, which are an even worse melee combatant than Goblins, especially with WAP rocked. So that's not much. Killing Skinks is not much to brag about. Black Orcs had a pretty terrible time of it. 30 kills, most of those against Temple Guard probably, but still, they just got deleted by lasers and nukes and all that stuff, and it was just a depressing time. Chameleon Skinks also got some value, but the problem is they got zoned out by Goblins. So this is probably 100 kills against Goblins. So they probably didn't pay for themselves even 1 unit of Chameleon Skinks, much less 2, unfortunately. We're regardless, well played to Brandis. I definitely do think if you're looking for a build to counter lizards as Greenskins, this is probably one of your best bets. Because this matchup is just brutal. You don't have too many choices otherwise. You could try Black Orcs plus Ragnaroks and just risk it, but you're not going to kill Croak that quickly. Croak's unbreakable, so you can't rout him. Croak does have a -9 melee attack debuff aura, so you're going to be less likely to hit him, despite the fact that he's a cripple on a wheelchair, basically. And yeah, Arachnox can't get him. Obviously, you could try a Giant, but a Giant is even squishier, and a Giant's really susceptible to Chameleon Skinks, obviously, so I'm not a fan of trying to bring Giants here. So I really do think that the Doom Diver is just the way to go. Then there might be other options. If you guys have had good experiences with other builds, I'm trying to think what would be effective. I'm sure there's other compositions that are probably effective in this build. Maybe Mass Daka, like really Mass Daka would work. But regardless, I did find this useful. Hope you guys found it entertaining and fun, and great game to Brennus. It was always a pleasure to face up against him, and games always tend to be good and fast, good and sort of intense right down to the wire. So definitely well played. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave your comments, critiques, questions, all that down below. I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.